Greetings, salam. This is Ramala Hubb'Allah. I am a guide, a teacher, somebody who has been working on the matter of helping create a better planetary life for humans and other species, just a better life across the planet, working with various matters, potentials, um, resolving certain conflicts through my work, and basically helping people think and understand certain matters which are typically not understood very well or clearly by people. My main audience are leaders, guides, coaches, politicians, community leaders, people in charge of other people, people who can make decisions, people who can allocate resources, people who can move resources, or people who can lobby for moving resources. Um, and then on the second tier, the common citizen who need to know these matters so that they start rearranging their thoughts and their conversations, thereby compelling their leaders to also shift towards the concern of the people. I use my faith, which is Islam, its teachings, which are very comprehensive, very succinct, very summarized, very pithy, very pithy, like very summarized to the point teachings about ecological matters. And this is something that has not really been understood about Islam and even other faiths, because ecology is something that human beings have not really understood for the longest time. Ecological thinking is about 360-degree thinking, about environment, about considering different. Don't mind the noises in the background. I'm in my room in a hotel in Himalayas, and there are all sorts of noises outside. So ecology is about wholeness. Hold on. Is about wholeness, all of it, all of it. Because I'm looking at things from behind the camera and my hands are slipping on the board, so please don't mind it. All at once, the whole system, right? So when we do ecological thinking, we think about everything that is in the system. And a very good example for understanding ecology is to look at the family, a family, right? And the human life, the life of a human. So you start off as a child, and then you grow teen, and then you become an adult, and an elder, and then you die, or you give birth somewhere in this schema. And as an elder, you give back to children, like you give your wisdom back to children, transfer yourself, like really sublimate yourself into the next generation, and then another child comes and the cycle continues. And then there are polarities in the family: women, men, young, old, or young here, old here, wherever. Sorry, old. You go from making zero money to lots of money. You become richer. You make an income um, as you grow up, and then you retire. And so there are all sorts of cycles that go on through a family. Then you have neighbors, you have an ecosystem, you have pets or other animals if you are living in a natural region where you get to interact with wildlife. Flora and fauna, so let's say like flora and fauna, you interact with that, fauna in your life. So you have a whole system and an ecology, and this is how you understand, well, basically, an ecology. And if you just blow that up on the macro scale, you have an understanding of a nation, and then blow it up even more, and then you have an understanding of the world. And just like within a family, there are variations. There are people who are young and small. There are people who are adults who can, work, and there are people who sort of retiring and they just give their wisdom back. So are nations also going through ups and downs, right? At any time, if you look at the world, there are nations that tend to be very youngish, old. There are poor, uh, or just starting out, right? This is really what the nature of life is. And what happens in what I call a convergent world, where everything kind of settles down, is that these things get mixed and matched. So you would not see nations polarized, it's called polarized, anymore, where there's one poor nation, one rich nation, or 10 rich nations, and the rest are poor. But in fact, when capital moves around, it tends to settle in a system until things become sort of more equal. And the strength of a nation depends upon its local ecology, which is a biological ecology, and the will and labor and entrepreneurship of its people. So, strength of a nation depends upon of a nation depends upon bioregion, which is created or even modified by humans. By created, I mean God. And then will and labor of people, quality of people, quality of people. Okay, this is what strength of a nation comes from. And on the larger scale, this is also how families gain their strength on a micro scale. Like, you need to be in a good, healthy place in order to make your home. The will and labor of the family will determine the quality of life of these people, and the quality of people's character, I should say, people's character, character determines how far they go in life, how well do they do in life, and where do they end up vis-a-vis where they started from. So this is what I teach people. Like, these are the things that you need to begin to know at first. This is a big picture. And then I'm going to shift to subjects like non-gendered polarities and their impact on human and planetary life. I teach these subjects. You wouldn't see them currently uploaded at Hubb'Allah.com and Islam Matrix. These are my websites, but I also have social media, and I'm working on integrating everything in such a way that when you land on any of my presences on the web, then you start moving towards my core content. I've had some, I'll admit, massive difficulty for years and years presenting that, because it was very difficult to articulate those things. Even though I knew those things, and I used to write them down in my diaries, it was really very hard to talk to people about that, because people where I lived had no interest in that. And then I migrated to the Himalayas, where they're already pretty savvy about these things, but still, I think I do pretty good articulation. At this point, my intended intended audience are not just my neighbors in the Himalayas, who are already very smart and very educated people, partly because they are living in a very active bioregion. And when you're living a more natural and more earthen way of life, then you already know a lot of things. Maybe you can't articulate them this way, but you know them. And then they are additionally actually really uh, well taught. They're very learned people, at least those of them who have obtained specific education. The problem that they have is the problem that we are having with ecology everywhere is this. If I make a spelling mistake, please forgive me. I'm observing that I'm making those mistakes. Dissemination of information. Mation. Okay. But it has a solution now, social media, which is currently being really abused, but also being put to good use, often by people who are more like the salt of the earth. There are people who are actually living in places that are less urban and more bi-regional. So they're always tied to the issues of their land and to cycles of nature. They depend so much on it that they can't ignore it. They don't because they're farmers and they're makers and producers. So really, this is the salt of the earth. I would write it down. Hello, salt of the earth. We also call them natives, but I do not define natives the way um, they're being defined by uh, colonial definitions. In colonial definitions, are natives, and then there are settlers, imperialists, colonizers. I do not believe in that definition. I believe in people who are already in some place and people who came later. The way they came often is not very um, nice. And that is because humans, for the longest time, have been living outside of a spiritual, integrated um, framework, which is where we were supposed to be. We will talk more about that. And that has a lot to do with polarities, by the way, and our ability or inability to walk in inner worlds. You see, if human beings learn to walk and abide in inner worlds, they will behave very differently. We will, in fact, not need to really fight with each other because the inner world is very expansive. It is the way it operates is that, all right, let me say this. And when you are in the external world, external, it's finite, right? 100 square kilometers are 100 square kilometers. In the internal world, we have infinite space. Okay. Um, Space changes with our perception and with our intentions. In fact, if we learn how to operate in the internal world, external space, of course, which is a manifestation of the internal, changes itself. That is something we're going to get into someday when I'm inspired to talk about that. I know a lot about this matter, but have not touched it for several years. So I'm intending that, inshallah, that is by the will of Allah, which is a Muslim name for God, as you would know if you're not Muslim. Um, I pray that I am inspired again and am able to talk about that. So our intentions change the external space, but a lot of human beings are actually stuck in the outside 3D matrix where we keep on fighting so that we have wars, and that is also a patriarchal, masculine framework. And I'm not saying these words in a negative sense. Patriarch just means father. So it's fatherly male view, which is fixed and rigid as it ought and need to be. And this is matriarchal, uh, feminine view. Feminine does not mean women in the spiritual sense, right? Feminine is just like, for example, when you're dreaming, you are in a feminine state, whether you are a male or a female. And when you're awakened, you are in a masculine state. And that are non-gendered polarities. So in my next video, inshallah, I will talk about what are non-gendered polarities and how do they impact human and planetary life. and how, when we learn to uh, operate in the non-gendered polarity realms, uh, can we gain hold of human assets, which we are losing very quickly because we are uh, appearing more and more in the 3D world and giving charge of it to things like artificial intelligence and so on, and that is going to become a problem. Hopefully not. I'm resting my hopes on the salt of the earth. I'm resting my hopes on people who say, nah, we're not going to go with this technology. And that is when the human rebellion potentially will win. On the other side is the empire. Empire. And I should say techno empire. Right? This is the masculine rigidity of human beings that say, now we can only operate in a certain sense. We need machines to work, we need this and that. And they're not able to look at the human potential and human thoughts and how we can alter things with thoughts. We can alter quite a lot of things with thoughts. Obviously, once something has manifested like as a salt shaker, it is a salt shaker, but we do our work well before we have got like ourselves a physical thing, such as like a bottle, maybe. Once this is manifested, yes, it's pretty fixed. So when we say our thoughts can alter reality, means we do the work before we have manifested this thing. You know what I mean? Like when you're a designer and you say, I'm going to design a bottle, then you do your thinking before you have created this thing, because once we've created this thing, we're getting a bit locked here in the material realm. There are people who can even undo this thing, but that's not all of us or most of us. Those are very rare. Often we have to operate in the physical realm to undo this thing, like we have to recycle the bottle or something that takes a lot of tax upon the planet, takes away our resources which we could be spending on distilling out and not hurting the planet, right? So if we need to recycle that, we will be pulling something else out of earth, making machines, running those machines with energy and fuel, which also we are extracting out of earth, and then making a new bottle. That's bad. This is why you need to do your thinking before you have created this thing. So here we are. Hopefully you are getting a hang of what I do and beginning to enjoy it and say, maybe this is something that I need to get into. And many of you will be saying, aha, 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 because these are things you already know and have seen and understand. I'm just putting them together on one map. Okay. So I enjoy talking about this. I definitely cannot shut this video down because I'm really loving getting into my stride. After switching this off, I'll get into my next video, inshallah, which is about non-gendered polarities. Okay, a brief uh, little intro right now. Non-gendered polarity is, there are a lot of teachings about polarities right now that are really taking off in the Western Hemisphere, where polarities have understandably been mucked for a long time due to ideological issues, and also how the West primarily has dealt with the material and material realm, or materials and substances, including medicine, right? So the thoughts and the chemicals, the biological products are mucked up, which is messing up polarities, and that is impacting the genders of the people uh, in those regions. Not to say that doesn't happen elsewhere in the world, it does, but it's very pronounced, as we can see right now in the West. This is why those are the regions that are showing this problem the most, even though gender issues abide everywhere else in the world. I am in Pakistan. The Indo-Pakistan region has a huge population of people who are non-binary. And how does that come about? I don't know. Definitely, there's something going on in the biological realm. So I'm not condemning those people. Often those people have very difficult lives. So if they have a polarized gender, then that's probably works for them. But if they don't, then that's good enough too. And we are supposed to like be kind to them and help them out, live an optimal life, which actually We do to some extent, and I'm not going to undermine their problems. Everybody has problems, so I'm not going to undermine everybody's problems and become an ableist or deny their trauma. I just want to look at, I just want to appreciate people also. Like, I don't want to victimize them unless we're talking about some of their issues, which when we talk about those issues, then we need to dive into the trouble or trauma. Otherwise, as a general principle, you keep your trouble and trauma inside you until it needs to be uncapped and released, right? So this is good for the safety and sanctity of human society, also for the bearer of the trauma, because if they're just constantly exposing the trauma, then it's not going to help them or work for them and make their life dysfunctional. Well, this is my view. You may or may not agree, but I'm just stating it out there. We can get into this later at some point, but that is not the core of my work. I'm going to focus on the core of my work. Let's focus on that and benefit from it to the extent that you can. If it doesn't work for you, you can always switch on to something else, and it's been nice having you around. So, non-gendered polarities are polarities that are not to do with men or women, but with other aspects and realms, such as day and night. So that's non-gendered polarity. But I will get into that later into talk that is specific to this subject. See you next. Salam from Ramala Hubb'Allah. Go check out my website, subala.com, the salammatrix.org. The Salam Matrix is slightly better designed, so check that out first. And I need to redo Hubb'Allah.com. So thank you for being with me. Salam. Take care.